On count 1, violation of the Georgia RICO Act, 20 years to serve in confinement. On count 10, life in confinement.
Cash Out, who got slapped with a 70-year bid just days ago, has been found dead behind bars. Word is inmates came for him once they learned the full extent of his crimes. I've got the full story. Let's dive in. From a trap to the top. Cash Out is everywhere right now with headlines about RICO indictment's conviction, a looming 70-year sentence, and whispers of his death. But before we unpack that drama, you need the backstory on this Atlanta spitter, because most folks have no idea who he was. Cash Out rose to prominence in the early 2010s with his hit single Cashing Out, which peaked at number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100. Shotti really had the streets and the radio unlocked with that joint. The song went platinum and had everybody from the projects to the penthouse saying, "I'm cashing out swag." Born August 15th, 1990, this young was coming up during one of the most legendary eras in Atlanta hip-hop, when the city was really establishing itself as the new mecca of the culture. But real talk, Cash Out's story don't start with success. It starts with a type of street that either makes you or breaks you. Back in 2009, when Homie was just 19 years old, he was charged with a gun possession offense in Clayton County, Georgia. Now, for a young black man in Georgia, getting caught with a strap usually means you're about to do some real time. But sometimes the universe gives you a break when you least expect it. Gibson was acquitted of this gun charge, which he later described as a pivotal moment that gave him a second chance in life. This acquit became the foundation of his whole redemption narrative. Shotti was out here telling everybody that getting off on them charges was God's way of telling him to put the streets down and pick up the mic. That's the type of story that resonates in the hood. The young trap king who chose bars over being behind bars.
Situation, certain things make you, and certain people who come to you make you go another way, you feel me? And I'm glad, that person, in that situation, that God put me through, made me go towards the music, you feel me? And now look at what happened, you feel me?
That's the type of real talk that made people believe in Cash Out's transformation. He wasn't trying to act like he never was in the streets. He was keeping it 100 about where he came from while showing folks he was trying to level up. After that acquit, Gibson started grinding on his music career for real. Initially signing with the independent label Bases Loaded. The come-up was gradual but serious. The label would later re-release his breakout single Cashing Out through Epic Records in March 2012 after Gibson signed with the major label under L.A. Reid's guidance. When I tell you this song was everywhere, the clubs, the trap houses, the radio, the block parties. This joint was a soundtrack to the streets in 2012. The song's success was crazy. It reached number 2 on the Hot R&B/Hip Hop Songs chart and topped the Hot Rap Songs chart. But what really showed how much impact this record had was when all the heavy hitters started jumping on remixes and freestyles. The song's success led to freestyles and remixes by artists like Ludacris, Krayzie Bone, Dat Bow, Roscoe Dash, Young Jeezy, Akon, Chief Keef, Fabulous, and Yodi. When you got legends like Luda and Jeezy with your music, you know you made it to the big leagues. The success kept building. Gibson followed up Cashing Out with Big Booty in July 2012, which saw moderate success. Then came the joint that really showed his staying power, She Twerkin' in 2014, which entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 100 and served as a lead single for his debut album, Let's Get It, released on August 26, 2014. Shorty had the strip clubs going crazy with that one. The album achieved moderate success on the Billboard 200, and Gibson continued to collaborate with prominent artists like Future, Lil Durk, and Migos, further embedding him in Atlanta's rap ecosystem. These wasn't just random features, either. These was his peoples, the who was really running Atlanta at the time. That's how you know Cash Out was really plugged in with the city's hip-hop elite. The legitimacy kept growing, too. Gibson even appeared in the 2019 film Uncut Gems, starring Adam Sandler, showing his cultural relevance was extending beyond just music. From the outside looking in, this was a perfect redemption story. Young black man beats the system, finds success through his talent, and becomes an inspiration to other kids coming up in similar situations. But while all the success was happening in the spotlight, some real dark was allegedly going down behind the scenes. Prosecutors would later allege that he was simultaneously building a criminal enterprise while building his rap career. This enterprise, they claimed, used Gibson's record label, Pyre's Music Group LLC, as a front to lure women into prostitution. The first real sign that something was wrong came in 2019 when Gibson was arrested in a Gwinnett County, Georgia prostitution sting operation. This arrest didn't make major headlines at the time, but it was the beginning of the end for Cash Out's carefully crafted public image.
Getting in trouble, catching cases, and catching a serious case. And
Yeah, you caught
2 serious cases,
talk about those cases.
Just some, I got caught into, I don't really get into it like that, you feel me?
Okay, it's public record.
Yeah,
that's
you-
fine.
yeah, you
It's
did.
not, I'm not asking you.
You never know, they might try to bring something back up on you, but I'm just blessed that it was not.
Looking back at that interview now, you can see Homie was always a little shy about his legal troubles. He kept it vague, talking about being blessed that previous cases didn't stick. At the time, it seemed like he was just being smart about not self-incriminating. But now, we know there was probably way more to the story. What's really crazy is how Cash Out always talked about loyalty and keeping real around him. He used to emphasize how important it was to have people who really been through with you. People who understand the street code, that tight circle he was talking about. The criminal enterprise, according to prosecutors, was built around family and close associates. Gibson's inner circle included his mother, Linda Smith, known as Mama Cash Out, and his cousin, Tyrone Taylor, both of whom would eventually be convicted alongside him. So, when he was talking about real friends and people who've been through things with him, he might have been talking about co-conspirators and some serious criminal. That's the type of loyalty that can turn deadly real quick. When your family and closest friends are also your partners in crime, it creates a situation where everybody's going down together when it hits the fan. The story of Cash Out ain't just about one rapper's fall from grace. It's about how the streets can follow you even when you think you've left them behind. How success and fame can become tools for exploitation. And how sometimes the people closest to you can drag you into the darkest imaginable. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when keeping it real goes too far. When street credibility becomes more important than basic human decency in the hood. We always talk about getting out, making it, and never forgetting where you came from. But Cash Out's story shows that sometimes remembering where you came from can become an excuse for never really leaving. The streets he claimed to have left behind were allegedly still very much part of his life, just hidden behind platinum plaques, red carpet appearances, and a carefully managed public image. As we'll see in the next part of the story, when the full extent of the allegations against Gibson came to light in that Fulton County courtroom, it would reveal a level of systematic abuse and exploitation that went far beyond anything the hip-hop community had seen before. The same energy and business acumen that made cashing out a platinum success was allegedly being used to destroy lives and traumatize vulnerable women. But first, we need to understand exactly what went down in that trial, where prosecutors would paint a picture of criminal enterprise so disturbing that even hardened legal observers would be shocked by the testimony. The street legend was about to face the ultimate test, and this time there would be no acquit, no second chance, and no redemption story to save him. When keeping it real goes wrong, the trial began with jury selection on June 3rd, 2025 in Fulton County Superior Court, presided over by Judge Melanie Lage. From day one, everybody knew this was going to be different. The media was out there heavy. The courthouse was packed, and you could feel the tension in the air. This wasn't just about Cash Out. This was about his whole crew, his family, and a network that prosecutors said had been terrorizing women for damn near a decade. The district attorney Ernest Winfrey described Gibson as the leader of a 7-year reign of terror. When they said reign of terror, they wasn't being dramatic. They was being literal. The charges against this were absolutely insane. Gibson faced 13 counts, including rape, aggravated sodomy, human trafficking, and racketeering. But see, numbers don't tell the whole story. What the prosecution was really saying is that Cash Out had turned his whole music empire into a trap. A trap, not the kind where you're selling work, but the kind where you're trapping human beings and forcing them into sexual slavery. That's some next-level predator, goes way beyond anything we typically see in hip-hop legal troubles. The prosecution's case was built around showing how Gibson allegedly used everything that made him successful in music. His charisma, his connections, his business set up to prey on vulnerable women. Evidence presented included victim testimonies describing being lured through Gibson's celebrity status in social media, promised financial opportunities, and status within PYZ Music Group only to face coercion, violence, and forced prostitution. Think about how up that is. These women thought they were getting an opportunity to work with a successful rapper, maybe get into the music business, maybe change their lives for the better. Instead, they was being set up to be sexually exploited and trafficked. The evidence the prosecution presented was extensive and damaging as hell. One victim testified that Gibson instructed her to deposit earnings into kitchen drawers, and another recounted being told to omit his name if reporting attacks to police. That second part is especially telling. Homie was coaching victims on how to lie to police to protect him. That shows premeditation and a level of criminal sophistication that goes way beyond impulse crimes. The prosecution also dropped some serious digital evidence. Text messages, phone calls, and financial records linked Gibson, Smith, and Taylor to the trafficking operation, showing how proceeds supported Gibson's lifestyle. In the age of smartphones and digital records, it's hard to hide criminal enterprises. Every text, every payment, every communication becomes evidence that can bury you in court. But the most disturbing testimony came from the victims themselves. Several women testified that they worked as prostitutes for Gibson with him or his mother, taking their earnings. Some reported being forced into prostitution after being raped by Gibson or Taylor, with one witness stating she was only given food if she performed sex acts for money. A forensic interviewer specializing in sex trafficking testified about the impact on victims, particularly those under 18, highlighting how Gibson's operation exploited vulnerabilities. Having an expert explain the psychological mechanics of trafficking helped the jury understand that this wasn't just prostitution. This was systematic abuse designed to break down victims' ability to resist or escape. The family aspect of this operation made it even more disturbing. Gibson's mother, Linda Smith, known as Mama Cashout, and cousin Tyrone Taylor were also central figures in the operation. When your own mother is helping you traffic women, that's some deeply twisted family dynamics. This wasn't just about one person's criminal behavior. This was about a whole family structure built around exploiting vulnerable women. Evidence indicated that Smith received digital payments from women involved in the sex trafficking operation, suggesting she played a role in managing or profiting from the proceeds of the enterprise. So, Mama Cash wasn't just looking the other way. She was actively participating in the money flow from trafficking. That's some cold blood right there. The prosecution also showed evidence of witness intimidation. Prosecutors presented evidence that Smith conspired with her son to intimidate a key witness who was both a co-defendant and a cooperating witness in the case. In jailhouse phone calls played in court, Gibson was heard instructing Smith to locate the witness, with prosecutors arguing this was an attempt to prevent her from testifying. That witness intimidation charge is serious as hell because it shows a criminal mindset continued even after getting arrested, instead of taking responsibility or showing remorse. Gibson was allegedly still trying to manipulate the system and silence his victims. That type of behavior shows a complete lack of conscience or empathy. Now, Cashout's defense team, led by attorney Kurt Matthews, wasn't going down without a fight. Matthews argued that the prosecution overcharged by presenting conflicting counts for the same incidents and questioned the credibility of cooperating co-defendants. This is a common defense strategy: attack the credibility of witnesses and argue that prosecutors are piling on charges to make the case seem worse than it is. The defense highlighted inconsistencies in accuser testimonies, claiming some voluntarily reconnected with Gibson and that witnesses were coerced into testifying. This is also typical defense work. If you can't deny that events happened, you try to argue that they happened differently than the prosecution claims. Matthews also questioned credibility of co-defendants who received plea deals and criticized the lack of...
Gibson maintained his innocence.
And, it's a hard decision, and I felt like they made the wrong judgment.
I've done things in my life. I'm not perfect, but the things I've been accused of, I know that I haven't done those things.
Even more wild,
he compared himself to Jesus Christ in his statements suggesting persecution.
Jesus was falsely accused. A lot of the prophets were falsely accused. You don't have that emotion like you've done something.
Comparing yourself to Jesus
when you're on trial for sex trafficking is some next-level delusional. That type of statement shows either complete disconnection from reality or a narcissistic personality that can't accept responsibility for anything. Either way, it's not a good look in front of a jury. The victim impact statements were the most powerful part of the trial. Victims described feeling disgusting and unlovable as a result of the exploitation and abuse they suffered. They reported severe mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other conditions stemming from being trafficked and coerced into prostitution. One victim's statement was particularly haunting. "For the rest of my life, I will fear that he will kill me all because I wouldn't do what he wanted me to do." That's the type of psychological damage that don't heal. Even with Gibson behind bars, these women are still living in fear because of what he allegedly did to them. Victims and their families spoke of the deep emotional toll, with one parent stating that Gibson literally stole the souls of all the women they victimized. When a parent uses language like "stole the souls," you know we're talking about damage that goes beyond the physical crimes into some spiritual, psychological destruction that might never fully heal. The systematic nature of the operation became clear through the evidence. The enterprise operated in locations such as a hotel room near Fulton Industrial Boulevard and a residence in Atlanta's Carroll Heights neighborhood. These wasn't random locations. They were established spots where the operation conducted business, showing planning and organization. The prosecution emphasized that the enterprise operated for at least 7 years, indicating a long-term pattern of behavior rather than isolated incidents. 7 years is a long time to be running a criminal operation. That's not impulsive behavior. That's a sustained criminal enterprise that had developed systems, procedures, and ways of avoiding detection. The technology aspect was crucial, too. Cell phone messages and financial records demonstrated Gibson's control over victims' finances and his use of fear and manipulation to maintain control. Modern criminals leave digital footprints everywhere, and those electronic records can be more damaging than eyewitness testimony because phones don't lie. As the trial progressed, it became obvious that this case was about more than just one rapper's criminal behavior. This was about how predators can use fame, success, and legitimate businesses as covers for horrific crimes. The use of RICO charges showed that prosecutors saw this as organized crime, not just individual bad acts, but coordinated criminal enterprise. On July,
I dated women who were doing escort or whatever, however people want to look at it from a moral standpoint, but who was doing these things as a grown woman. I've only dealt with grown women. Nothing was forced. Nothing was coerced or anything of that nature. If you notice before this trial, no woman can say anything about me before this trial. If you notice before this indictment, no woman can say anything about me before this indictment.
Of the entertainment industry. When that jury foreman stood up to read the verdict, everybody in that courtroom knew they was about to hear something that would change lives forever. But what nobody expected was that just days after the sentencing that would follow, this story would take an even more shocking turn that would leave investigators, legal experts, and the entire hip-hop community trying to make sense of an ending that nobody saw coming. The verdict, fam, July 18th, 2025, was the day that Cash Out Street legend status officially died and his legacy as a predator was cemented forever. After 7 weeks of some of the most disturbing testimony ever heard in a Fulton County courtroom, the jury convicted Gibson on 12 counts, including RICO violations, rape, aggravated sodomy, and 2 counts of sex trafficking. The verdict was comprehensive and devastating. This Nick cooked on almost every charge they brought against him. Gibson was found guilty of violation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, rape, aggravated sodomy, 2 counts of trafficking a person for sexual servitude, battery, possession of firearm during the commission of felony, pimping, pandering, keeping a place of prostitution, willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer, and possession of prohibited items by an inmate. The only charges he beat were a handful of lesser counts. But with everything else sticking, those acquitendants got hit hard, too. Linda Smith was convicted on 1 count of trafficking and RICO charges, though she was acquitted on another trafficking count and a prostitution charge. Mama Cash might have dodged some bullets, but she was still looking at serious time. Tyrone Taylor was found guilty on all counts except pimping, including rape, aggravated sodomy, and RICO violations. Cousin Tyrone was about to find out that family loyalty can be expensive as hell. 3 days later, July 21st, 2025, the sentencing hearing started, and that's when it got really emotional. Before the judge dropped those sentences, Judge Melanie Leftridge heard victim impact statements that laid bare the devastating human cost of Gibson's crimes. These statements weren't just testimony. They were raw, unfiltered truth about what happens when predators destroy lives. One survivor's words cut deep. "For the rest of my life, I will fear that he will kill me, all because I wouldn't do what he wanted me to do." That's the type of psychological damage that haunts somebody forever. Even with this up, she's still living in terror because of what he did to her. That's not just a crime. That's terror.
Pray for the victims, and I pray for them and will continue to pray. Because God says, if you love me, you love others.
Stealing souls. They're talking about damage that goes beyond the physical, beyond the financial. They're talking about destroying the very essence of who somebody is as a human being. The victims reported severe mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other conditions stemming from being trafficked and coerced into prostitution. These women go to be dealing with this trauma for the rest of their lives, while Gibson was sitting in court acting like he was the victim. When it was Gibson's turn to address the court, Homie gave what might be one of the most tone-deaf, delusional statements ever heard in a criminal sentencing. Interview 1835-1910. Drew was really standing there after being convicted on multiple rape and trafficking charges, talking about how everything was consensual. The audacity and complete lack of accountability was staggering. But it got even worse when he started comparing himself to religious figures. His mother, Linda Smith, took a completely different approach. Her statement was filled with what seemed like genuine remorse and acknowledgement of the victim's pain. Interview 1930-1945. At least Mama Cash showed some humanity and acknowledged the suffering her actions contributed to. That type of accountability might have helped her when it came time for sentencing. When Judge Lage was ready to drop those sentences, her words before announcing them showed exactly how she felt about what she'd heard during the trial. Interview 2001-2027. When a judge uses words like diabolical conduct and the very worst of human behavior, you know she about to drop some serious time. Gibson was sentenced to life in prison, plus
Court heard and viewed evidence demonstrating the very worst of human behavior toward other human beings. The jury verdict in this case reflects that the state met its burden in proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the diabolical conduct of the defendants occurred. The sentencing to be meted out by this court will be responsive to that.
When a judge uses words like diabolical.
Interview 2041-2140. The judge kept going, stacking time for trafficking, battery, gun charges, and everything else. Even if some convictions got overturned on appeal, this is never seeing the streets again. That's the type of sentence that makes a statement, not just to Gibson, but to any other predators who think they can use fame and success as cover for hurting people. Linda Smith got 30 years, which was heavy, but way lighter than her son. Tyrone Taylor got the same as Gibson. Life plus...
Count 1, violation of the Georgia RICO Act, 20 years to serve in confinement, to run consecutive with count 10. On count 10, rape, life in confinement. Count 12, aggravated sodomy, life in confinement to run concurrent. with content.
The judge kept going, stacking time for trafficking, battery, gun charges, and everything else. Even if some convictions got overturned on appeal, this is never seeing the streets again. That's the type of sentence that makes a statement, not just to Gibson, but to any other predators who think they can use fame and success as cover for hurting people. Linda Smith got 30 years, which was heavy but way lighter than her son. Tyrone Taylor got the same as Gibson, life plus 70 years. Cousin Tyrone found out the hard way that blood don't protect you from consequences. All three had to register as sex offenders and were banned from contacting victims or going to certain areas where the crimes happened. The case highlights the intersection of fame.
70 years. Cousin Tyrone found out the hard way that blood don't protect you from consequences. All three had to register as sex offenders and were banned from contacting victims or going to certain areas where the crimes happen. The case highlights the intersection of fame, power, and exploitation in ways that the hip-hop community is still grappling with. This case was part of a trend of Atlanta rappers facing RICO charges following high-profile cases against Young Thug and YFN Litzy. The pattern suggests deeper issues in how success, street credibility, and criminal behavior intersect in hip-hop culture. Gibson's use of his record label, Pyre's Music Group LLC, as a front for alleged criminal activity perverted everything music is supposed to represent. Instead of being a vehicle for creativity and positive influence, his label allegedly became a tool for exploitation and abuse. The systematic nature of Gibson's alleged crimes also exposed gaps in how society identifies and responds to trafficking operations. The enterprise operated for at least 7 years before being fully exposed, raising questions about what warning signs were missed and what systems could be put in place to catch such operations earlier. For the hip-hop community, Gibson's case represents a painful reckoning with questions about misogyny, the treatment of women, and the difference between artistic expression and real-world behavior. The genre has long struggled with these issues, and cases like Gibson's force uncomfortable conversations about responsibility and accountability. The legal proceedings also demonstrated the evolving use of RICO charges against public figures. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis's office has pursued several high-profile RICO cases against Atlanta rappers, showing a strategic approach to targeting what prosecutors see as organized criminal enterprises. But beyond all the legal and cultural implications, this story is ultimately about the victims, the women whose lives were allegedly destroyed by Gibson's criminal enterprise. Their courage in coming forward, testifying, and seeking justice despite the trauma they endured is what made this case possible. Gibson's story serves as a cautionary tale about second chances, street credibility, and the seductive power of fame. His 2009 acquit was supposed to be his turning point, but if the prosecution's case was accurate, that redemption story was always a lie. It raises difficult questions about how we evaluate claims of change and transformation. Found this information exciting and unbelievable? Be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.